It's time, everyone. You know what time it is. You've read the title of this episode. We're not going to fuck around. Welcome to Cranked and Ranked. I, as usual, am your host, Old Head. With me, as always, Eddie the Ed Sparxx.
Da-na-na-na. Yeah!
Nice.
Da. Da-na-na-na. Da-na-na. What's up?
Perfect. Isn't that's like the best scream in any song ever recorded in the history of music? Like I know some people would be like, "What about Roger Daltrey?" I'm like, he may have been first, but Bruce topped him many times over.
Yeah.
Hello everybody. It's Iron Maiden time. There are bigger bands that we space things out because we've done like Judas Priest and we did like Metallica and all these different things, and so the bigger ones I feel like a lot of times we push them off because not only are they big undertakings, but at the same time it's like, well, we don't want to blow that wad right away. So so welcome to year 4 where we finally get to Iron Maiden. And this will be a 2-parter, although previously back in the day we would have done 3 parts with this, I think.
Yeah, but we've upped our game. We've tightened the format, and
we've become much more efficient, I believe, as well.
Yeah,
and so it's almost like we can still have our little veers off in our tangents, but we keep things kind of tight. We are we're getting better at it, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being here. And so today, because it's 17 albums total for Iron Maiden, today is going to be the bottom 8. Next time will be the top 9. And we have a lot to talk about. So we'll just jump right into it. And what we normally talk about at the beginning of the episode is where the band came into our lives. Iron Maiden's a very weird one for me because I saw Iron Maiden videos on Headbangers Ball when I was young. Like you would see Bring Your Daughter to the Slaughter, and what's the Can I Play with Madness, and of course you'd see Run to the Hills and stuff like that. And it's so weird because I was perfectly fine. I was into like Aerosmith and Van Halen and all these other bands, but for some reason Iron Maiden and Judas Priest seemed like old people music. Like I was always just like, this is for like old people that like metal. Like it's just not for me. So even though it was fine, I never cared about Iron Maiden until I got older. And it was only because you go to rock shows and Iron Maiden songs play all the time before bands start playing. Yeah. And I kept hearing songs and going like, this is a banger. So finally one day I just sort of dove into Iron Maiden, but it was not a natural early thing for me. It was a little bit later in life, in my 20s, that I started to really get into Iron Maiden, and then it just got more and more and more. So that's a different story for me. Where was your first Iron Maiden exposure?
Well, this is one of our video game discoveries.
Nice.
Same song, 2 games.
Oh, okay. Which was it? Was it Number of the Beast or was it Run to the Hills?
Think Power Slave.
Power Slave. Is it the song Power Slave? Like what song off Power Slave is on video games?
2 Minutes to Midnight.
Oh shit! Yeah. Okay.
It's in Guitar Hero 5, and it was like one of my favorites to play. And I saw that it was metal. Yeah, I had no idea when I got Guitar Hero 5. Bearing in mind, this is still in like 2009, so I am young. Just before we enter the year of 2010, when I became the metalhead I am now.
Which for context, if you're new, he was 10 at that point.
Yeah, well, 11, but we're splitting hairs here.
Okay, okay, fine.
Yeah. But, you know, like I was saying, the song 2 Minutes to Midnight just gripped me, and I was like, oh, this is ace. And then, like, a couple days later, I was playing Vice City, and I noticed the rock station, and I started listening to it to hear more stuff like this that I liked.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, 2 Minutes to Midnight is on that game as well. So I was just like, this is amazing. If I want to play it, I'll load up Guitar Hero, and if I want to run people over to it, I'll play Grand Theft Auto. So yeah, that was that song is very much a time capsule for me, because it's one of the first metal songs like I ever heard and was exposed to constantly.
Yeah.
And really, Maiden in the beginning were more of a gateway band than Metallica ended up being, but like for that brief couple months in early 2010, I was just like, Iron Maiden are awesome. And like alongside bands like Rammstein and System of a Down, I mean, that's a weird trifecta, but at the time I was like, do you know what? This stuff rules.
Yeah.
And then I kept buying more Guitar Hero games and listening to the rock stations and Grand Theft Auto games, and that just kind of shaped my taste palette. And that's eventually down the line, I realized that the Iron Maiden remasters, the CDs, had like parts of like Eddie's head. So if you got them all, they line up and complete Eddie's head. And you know me, collector mindset. The moment that sets in, I'm like, right, well, I got to have them all. so that's what kind of spurred me on to get them.
That would trigger like some OCD in me if I like was missing one of them or something. I get bummed out just missing something in a collection period that I have. Like I remember like my wife got like a box like a Bob Dylan box set, and it's like volume 3 or volume 4. I'm like, we gotta go buy volumes 1 through 3. We can't just have volume 4. And she doesn't care. She's just like, well, whatever. We have volume 4. And I'm like, no.
I'm the same. I'm totally the same, because I remember one time I went into Nostalgia Music in Truro, great record shop, and I went in there, and I didn't have these two albums at the time, but I saw Use Your Illusion 1 and 2, and I picked them both up, and I was like, well, I can't buy 1 without 2, or even worse, 2 without 1. So like, I
remember when those albums came out, and there were people that just went and bought number 2 because it had "You Could Be Mine" on it, and I'm just like, whoa, if you're only buying 1, this is weird. That was back, it was early on in my life when I started experiencing those weird things that I have in my psyche and in my brain, where I'm just like, why does this bother me so much? But it's it really does.
Even back then, I would have just opted to have 2 tapes over the 2 CDs.
That's actually what I did. I couldn't afford the CD, so I had both of them on cassette until I upgraded. But okay, but that's a different band that we've already done. We are on to Iron Maiden, and we got a lot to do. We've got 8 albums in this episode, the bottom 8, and I'm going to be critical about most of these albums. But really, just to get it out there, I think Iron Maiden's a fantastic band and one of the greatest metal bands of all time. That being said, I have some thoughts. So let's get into it. And as usual, I throw it over to Eddie to start us off with his number 17 Iron Maiden album.
Okay, so my number 17 is not a controversial pick. It is the X Factor from 1995.
Okay.
And this one for me, like, this is the first Blaze Bayley album, and it's even down to like the artwork and the overall packaging vibe. Everything on this album is a big departure from the 9 that led up to it. And it's always going to be difficult being an 80s metal band in the mid 90s, the era where it couldn't have been less cool to be this type of band, no matter how established you are. I'm going to jump right in.
Okay.
Sign of the Cross, You know, already we have a bold move. It takes huge balls to open an album with an 11-minute and 17-second epic, especially with a new singer who, you know, to his credit, isn't trying to sound like Bruce and is a
Nope.
completely different singer to Bruce.
Hmm.
Because he was in the band Wolfsbane.
Yep.
Um, it- Although, like my biggest issue with this album right out of the gate is illustrated perfectly in the intro. You could have trimmed 2 whole minutes off that intro and achieved the exact same result.
I'm going to throw it out there that every album that they've put out since then, you could say that about. There are things that should have been edited and could have been edited.
Yeah, they've definitely got to a point in their career where they're big enough to be able to turn around and say, "Fuck you, I'm an Iron Maiden and you're not." But
Yep.
some of their
Or
latter day,
more precisely, I'm Steve Harris and you're
yeah,
not.
yeah. For me, like, there's a little bit of self-editing that could help a lot of this latter day material. However,
Mhm.
you know, the menacing thing in the middle of this song sounds really cool. It's almost like boss fight music. Lord of the Flies, immediately like on track 2 now. I'm thinking, Jesus Christ, the guitars in this mix sound wimpy compared to the drums and the vocals. Like, the guitars are the furthest back in the mix, and it's
Mhm.
like, guys, you're a metal band, you know.
Yeah.
You know, it's almost like the guitarists are in the room next door while I'm in with the drummer and the singer, you know, and the bass player. But yeah, you know, Man on the Edge, the solos are awesome in this one. Fortunes of War, this track's a bit meandering for me. You know, there's cool melodies, but it's got the length of a prog song without the scale of a prog song, if you
Yeah.
catch my drift. Even the tempo shift felt kind of sluggish. Is that thunder?
Yep.
Jesus Christ.
We're having a little storm over here right now.
We're pissing off the metal gods with these
Yeah.
this review. Look for the Truth. Whoa oh vocals never cease to get a little, you know, they make me think, okay, you know, you could kind of argue it's a bit of a cop out, but that's built for the live show. You
Yep.
know,
Absolutely.
they're handing it off to the audience for some participation. Um, where was I at? The Aftermath. Cool, sort of, if AC/DC was a new album sort of riff. Judgment of Heaven. Now, here's a nice little change of pace, an actual upbeat track, because for the most part, like, this album is pretty much the max capacity you could have on a CD at the time.
Hmm.
Uh, and most of the album is like really slow, dark, and brooding. And it's like, even the gallopy parts are like dun, 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 dun,
Well,
dun, dun.
didn't I read that this was an album Steve Harris was writing while going through a divorce or something like that?
I totally understand the backstory and all that there, and I know
Hmm.
that, you know, he was going through a lot of shit.
Yeah.
But, like, you know, I've heard Maiden do dark before, but kept it a lot more entertaining. I feel like this album suffers from a mixture of, I don't want to say bad ideas so much as ideas that ended up not gelling.
Yeah.
You know, Steve Harris, though, like Blood on the World's Hands, Steve Harris is one of those iconic players who you just recognize the moment you hear him. Like, there is a definitive
Oh
Steve
yeah.
Harris bass sound, let alone songwriting style. The Edge of Darkness, just more brooding mid 90s Maiden. 2 a.m. I liked the hooks in 2 a.m.
Yep. Yep.
And then we have the second longest track on the album to close us out with The Unbeliever. Honestly, there's moments on this album that jump out, but this album is way too long and drawn out with not a very great mix. And that sadly makes a lot of things that feel like they have potential a bit of a chore to listen to. And it just feels like too much of a commitment. and you know, like I say, it hurts me to say it, but you know, this is not an album I can see myself revisiting anytime soon. You know, maybe if I, God forbid, ever go through a divorce, it might click. But
All right. Well, there you go. That is not my number 17, or really anywhere close to
wow,
my
okay.
number 17. So I gotta be honest here. So I did an Iron Maiden ranking like 3 years ago or more in my albums ranked series that I used to do on my YouTube channel before Cranked and Ranked.
Before I hijacked it.
And yeah, and I love it when people comment like, "Why don't you do rankings anymore?" And I'm like, "I do them every week, pretty much."
Yeah.
But I would have considered myself a big Iron Maiden fan at that point. Flash forward to now, I got to the point with their latest album where I'm now I've jumped off of the train. Okay. So my number 17 is Senjutsu from 2021, because it had to go here because this was the album that I heard it, listened to it several times because I did a review on Old Bollocks with Howard H. Smith. And I think it was on the third time going through, I just went, I just don't care anymore. I don't care. Because Senjutsu has so many things not good about it. It was overwhelming to me, because the band are still a great band. Every member still great. People would probably have remarks about Yannick or whatever his name is. Is that how you pronounce it?
Yannick Gers.
Yannick.
Yeah.
Because I have seen isolated tracks of him playing on stage, and it's pretty bad.
Really?
He mostly just bounces around and kind of plays the songs.
It's just the hype
I
man.
had to take. Well, he's unnecessary. He's like a fucking third guitar player now. Anyway, so that's so I had to take a coffee drink. So first off, like I'm gonna say about pretty much every album in this episode, this album is way too fucking long for what it presents to you. And overall, it's just Maiden doing the same kind of shit that they've been doing for 20 years now. And the things that are different are just minutely different, and usually on this particular album, different in a way that is completely uninteresting and it doesn't do anything for me. On top of that, this is the most baffling part of this album. There's a keyboard through a lot of the songs. Same exact keyboard sound on all the songs that it's on, but it sounds like scratch keyboard. Like the album was just playing and somebody was playing keys to it because they intended to actually put real keyboards on later on. And then when they mixed it, they're like, fuck, we forgot the keyboards. And whatever, just put that on there. Because it's an awful sound. It sounds so clunky. And a lot of the times, whoever's playing it, it's offbeat with when the notes change. So I'll be, why is it so, it's really hard. Because I'm like, why is it there first off? Like I'm okay with keyboards because they've done keyboards in the past really well, but this one just feels so just thrown in at the last minute where they went, we need some keys. All right, hold on, play the track. Okay, cool. That's the end of the, it's the most, I don't know why it's there and why they allowed it to sound that bad. And so on top of all that, most of the songs are completely uninteresting. There's a couple highlights here, and unfortunately that's it for me. Because everything else is just like, well, if I want to listen to Iron Maiden, I am not listening to this album. Because there are things, it got to the point, I would say probably around Matter of Life and Death, maybe, where all of a sudden, if you just played an Iron Maiden song from any of the albums after that, I'd be like, I don't know what album this is from. I could not tell you, because they're all similarly produced, similarly written. They have, I said this a lot in my old ranking, it seems like they have an Iron Maiden template now. And
I'm in agreement, yeah.
And they do certain things all the time. And so in the case of like an album like Senjutsu, they just take ideas that are kind of boring, but then they blow it out to like these long ass songs where like not a lot really happens. And they used to, like, it'd be fine, if like they had never done long songs before, but they have some fucking epics that just keep you engaged and entertained all the way through. Now that being said,
Mariner.
Yeah. So that being said, though, I realize they're older dudes. They've been doing it for a really long time. So what they're putting out, it's still pretty impressive. And if I was a diehard Iron Maiden fan, I could probably find a lot of things that I did like about this album. But as somebody that has been uneasy with the last with this millennium of Iron Maiden, it finally got to the point where I went, all right, I'm just not a fan. I mean, peace be with you for everyone that is fans, but I'm jumping off now. And I'll still be here if they put out another album and they release a single where I go, whoa, fuck, wasn't expecting that. Then I will be back on board. But I don't think that's going to happen, because you get to be one of the biggest metal bands in the world, and nobody's going to tell you no. Nobody's going to tell you to edit something. Nobody's going to admit that you're repeating yourself. Just more of the same, not impressive. Number 17, Senjutsu.
Okay, cool. So, while we're on the subject of it, I am entirely in agreement with you on the new millennium era of Maiden having the template, as you said, and I'm gonna say,
the biggest one is there's always a song that the first part is like a driving 4/4 beat, and then when it gets to the chorus, it completely shifts to a dun 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 dun. Yeah, it's literally just the same. And there's so many songs, and it's always a weird transition where it's all of a sudden a different tempo as well. And I'm just like, well, what happened there? Okay, fine. Yeah. But they have to throw those parts in because that's the part where the whole crowd is bouncing, and so I get it. It's fan service in a lot of ways, but okay.
Yeah, for me, like there's a section coming up, 15. I'm gonna be honest, 15 through 10 are virtually interchangeable on any day of the week. Like I pretty much went off gut instinct alone when ranking these, because like I was listening to I listened through to all of the bottom half of my ranking, and I thought it's all very impressive, but on the flip side, the whole time I'm thinking, man, I could be listening to Peace of Mind right now.
And it's even worse when you're doing several Maiden albums in a row. Like if you play me one song off of Senjutsu, on some random day, and I'd be like, not bad. But in the grand scheme of doing what we do, man, it's a lot.
It's like Maiden are, they're almost like a victim of their own early success, that they put out such a string of classics that the top 5 is always going to be, well, top fucking 9, 10, or however many you want to extend it to.
Yeah.
This latter period is just as far as metal goes, it's good.
Yeah.
But for Maiden, they have kind of repeated themselves quite a lot. Still love you though. So my number 16 is Virtual 11.
Okay, well, this is our first matchup. Virtual 11 is also my number 16.
Okay, cool. So it's the last Blaze Bayley album, and I feel bad having put both his albums at the bottom because he's not a bad singer. I just think he, again, he's a victim of where the band were at the time. But he got to be in Iron Maiden, which is cool as fuck. So yeah, Future Real is the polar opposite of the previous album's opening track, short and to the point, which unfortunately can't be said for its follow-up, Angel and the Gambler, which absolutely did not need to be 10 minutes long. The edited version, great. because there's not 5 minutes of "Don't you think I'm a savior? Don't you think I could save you? Don't you think I could save your life? Don't you think I'm a savior? Don't you think I could save you? Don't you think I could save your life? Don't you think?" I was making a point there, you know. But
point taken.
Point taken. Yeah, it's a fun up-tempo song, and the music video version is great. Also, the music video is fucking hilarious. The entire thing looks like a bowling alley screen when you get a strike.
Yeah.
You know how bowling alleys got to 1998 with their graphics and just gave up, and they were like, "Well, that's the look, and that's gonna be the look from here on in." But you know, it's before it gets annoying, it's a catchy number. Lightning Strikes Twice could have benefited from some gang vocal backing action in the chorus, but you know, Blaze manages to do it himself, even if it feels a little clunky. It's still a fun song. You know, it's like lightning strikes twice, lightning. It's like got no time to breathe. But the Klansman.
And you know, they probably left him on his own to do that live too.
Yeah.
if they played it live, I don't even think they did.
Yeah, that'd be interesting to see how many times these Blaze era songs got played. But like the Klansman, now a lot of people rave about the Klansman, and you know, with good reason. It's a good song. It's pretty long, but has much more going on, and is much more justified than the sheer Leviathan length of Angel and the Gambler for how much content is in it. When Two Worlds Collide. Now, this is an unfortunate or fortunate, depending on how you see things, side effect of growing up when I did. Whenever anything involving the phrase "worlds collide" is involved, all I can think of is that episode of SpongeBob where the caveman and the robot do that like rap battle duet, and it's like, you know, it's fucking ace. You know, this song's good too, but
that's not that. I don't think I've ever seen that. And you say worlds collide.
Laugh so hard you swear you died when worlds collide.
So funny enough, from my point of view, it's you ready to go? 'Cause I'm ready to go. That's worlds collide for me.
and then there's me, like, worlds collide is a marvelous thing, but you never heard a robot and a caveman sing, you know. But yeah, it's great. Look it up. It's actually really catchy. The Educated Fool. Really like the guitar solo in this one. Don't look to the eyes of a stranger. So, it's similar to Angel and the Gambler in that it is needlessly drawn out. Como estas, amigos? Somber kind of closer. Now, I will say about this album that bumped it above X Factor for me is this album is not only produced better, but in my opinion, has better songs and is a bit more self-edited. It feels much more Maiden in its vibe and approach. And I'm going to be honest, I go to Maiden to hear Maiden. So go figure that this album for me goes above X Factor.
So it's funny because we matched up on this one, but I feel the complete opposite with you. I feel like this of the two is worse, has the more dull songwriting on it. Because I have no problem with the tone of X Factor, because you know me, I love the mid 90s odd albums that take a little bit of time to grow on you and stuff. But this
I do too, but this one just missed the mark for me.
So for the case with this one for me, unfortunately, is that it was very clear on both of those albums and seeing them live that Blaze Bayley was in over his head. It's very clear because their music, for the most part, needs a more dynamic vocalist than Blaze. Blaze is really good. I just think he fits more on X Factor than the songs on Virtual 9. Like that one, this is the one where, like, not only are the songs not that interesting to me, but there's so many times where I go, he's singing this in a lower register, and it's clear that it was written for a higher register.
Yeah.
And so it's almost like the band were like giving him a hint, like, "Oh, we're writing these songs for Bruce, so you try to sing these." Oh, I got to sing down here then, which is fine. Everyone has their own range, and he sounds good. He gave it his all. I'm going to give that. What?
Sorry, while it's on my mind, you've just jogged the memory. Keep going. I'll tell you in a sec.
Okay, I just overall, to me, the biggest part of it is those two things. I think it's pretty dull overall, and I think that Blaze sounds even more out of his element on this album. And it's clear they needed a change. But not only that, like from them as a band, from a business standpoint, like they were playing to the smallest venues they'd ever played, I think. Yeah. And so of course it makes perfect sense why things worked out where Bruce came back, and then they just started making Iron Maiden music. Because they're like, we don't ever want to have to play small theaters and clubs ever again. So now they don't, because they write arena ready or festival ready Iron Maiden music all the time. Yeah. But that being said, even though, I mean, it's still a good album. Once again, you throw on any song from Virtual 9 and I'll be like, yeah, cool. I mean, even if it's too long, I'll be like, oh, this is the only one we're listening to, right? Because I can move on with my life after this. But yeah, kudos to Blaze. Also, when it comes to Blaze, if I want to listen to Blaze Bayley, I'm putting on that first Wolfsbane record because it fucking rules. Yeah, but yeah, he's great. But yeah, I'm gonna give more love to X Factor later. But my number 16, we had a little matchup. Let's see if we have any more.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, while you were talking about like Blaze's register compared to Bruce's register, I remember I was in a band one time, I think back in it was either like early uni or at the end of college, where like I was trying to get something off the ground. We were auditioning people, and someone turned around and said, I can sing like Bruce Dickinson. And I was like, really? And they said, well, I can sing like Bruce Dickinson, but an octave lower. So I said, so you can't sing like Bruce Dickinson. so, it's like defeats the fucking object completely.
An octave lower. Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah. Oh. It's stuff like that just makes me laugh, man. It's a complete lack of self-awareness. But yeah, so my number 15... now this, in some circles could be considered sacrilege, but knowing the kind of, with the insight that we have now and the span of albums we have, my number 15 is Brave New World.
Oh man, they're gonna fucking come after you.
I know. And
they did that. Yeah. To me, that album's actually higher now than it was back when I did my other ranking. But man, that was the most hate that I got was for putting that album low.
And here's my thing. Like I say, this 15 through 10 could change any day of the week. But my gut was telling me Brave New World to me was them, obviously a step up again, but they're finding their feet again. I think my biggest obstacle for this album is the very clearly Y2K production quality on it. Like,
yeah, a little bit of that, yeah.
Yeah, so like that for me, I don't know what it is. Let's just dive in. So Brucey's comeback album and the first of the 3 guitarist era. Now I'm going to say this outright. The Wicker Man is a fantastic song. Statement of intent, a return to form, and is that double kick in the chorus, or just knowing Nico, it's probably just killer single foot action. But damn,
yeah, he plays shit with like sometimes that it sounds double, and he's doing it with one foot.
Yeah, he's like, dude's doing like John Bonham style like footwork, but just keeping it going. Now Ghost of the Navigator. Like I say, not a massive fan of the compressed year 2000 production style. Cool song though. And another double kick passage is a welcome addition to the Maiden arsenal. Now, at the time, I thought, this is cool. This is them adding something in, you know, because they'd never really done the double kick thing before.
Yeah.
Brave New World is a cool title track. Blood Brothers is great. I remember seeing this live at Download last year, and it really hit different with the speech Bruce gave before he.
It might be my favorite song on the album. I really do like that one.
Yeah, yeah. Like it's if you ever look at the Download 2022 performance of it, it's great. Bruce does his, crowd work, and he goes, right, the last 3 years of our lives have been fucking shit, and he's just like, so tonight we're blood brothers, something along those lines. I kind of butchered it, but it's the way, seeing that definitely give me a different, view of the song, and now it kind of sticks in my head with a cool memory.
Yeah.
The Mercenary, cool melodic riffs. Dream of Mirrors is a ballady track. The Fallen Angel. If I had a quid for every song called Fallen Angel by an 80s metal band, dude. The Nomad is a lengthy one. Out of the Silent Planet, not to be confused with
King's X.
Yeah. But there's a kind of funky bit in this one, and I enjoyed it a lot. And to close out, we have the thin line between love and hate. The chemical, physical, and biological nature of love. An exploration of the meaning of meaning.
Part one.
Dude, I'm so glad that we did that Bill and Ted episode before we did this, because that was perfect.
Yep.
But yeah, like I say, right, we've entered the realm of, for me, good, but I'm definitely prioritizing the 80s stuff.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie,
Yeah. There'll be a few at this point for me. There'll be a few albums that I'll go pretty quickly through because my thoughts on them are pretty much the same, because a lot of them are pretty much the same. My number 15 is A Matter of Life and Death from 2006. And really, at this point, it's just more of the same, more interchangeable songs, more of them sticking to whatever songwriting template. I mean, I'm assuming that I would like to be in on a songwriting session, because I don't know if, like, do they have tick boxes and they go, did we do this yet on the album? Okay, no, we need to do that. Next song has that. I just don't know, but I don't know how you write things that are so similar to things that you've already written.
Riff blur, big time.
Like song blur, fucking song blur.
Song blur.
Yeah. But so just like with a lot of the 2000s albums, Matter of Life and Death has some good songs, but it has many just okay songs, and it's not a go-to album. It's really just one of those sort of, oh, they did this album too, I forgot. It's that kind of thing. It's but I think each one of these albums, for younger people especially, if this is the album that you came in on, it's probably a really special album. Because I deal with that all the time with people when I talk about Anthrax and they want to shit on State of Euphoria, and I'm like, what the fuck are you hearing? This is the album that brought me into the band. It's fucking incredible. So maybe somebody came in on A Matter of Life and Death and they're like, it's a very important album to you, and that I think that's the only thing that can save it is it having personal things for you, because otherwise it's just another 2000s Iron Maiden album. So moving on to number 14.
Well, I can jump straight off of that because my number 14 is A Matter of Life and Death. Okay. Now this album for me is among the first metal CDs I bought, but I think I bought this one and Power Slave, and I listened to this maybe like 1 or 2 times and listened to Power Slave about 30 within a month.
In the world of Iron Maiden, that's like night and day. It's like Power Slave is like one of the best.
Yeah. It's like I say, different world, great opening track, but I'm immediately struck with the production. And to me, I don't know what it is with this album. This album somehow feels too bright and muddy at the same time. in the production, and I
Well,
don't quite know how to describe it. Is it
I
like
I think if I remember right, Matter of Life and Death is the one that they chose to not master.
right?
It's like not
Yeah,
mastered. It's just a rough. It's just a mix, and then they put it out.
right. And that kind of puts into perspective why you master an album because
Yeah, whose idea was that? Yeah, it's
yeah,
like it's almost like they forgot to master it, and then they were like, "Oh yeah, we meant to do that. We
the
meant
thing
to do that."
and like, I understand the odd, like, creative choice, we liked it the way it sounded, cool. But I saw, like, I like to scour other people's rankings and see what the general consensus is of albums, and
Yeah,
see if I'm being too harsh, see if I'm being too biased. I like to hear other opinions and then form my own. That being said, people rave about this one
interesting.
a, a lot, and I get it if you like Raw, but my
Ooh,
favorite
baby, I
Maiden
like
is
it raw.
yeah.
Yes, baby, I like it raw. Shimmy, shimmy, y'all, shimmy, yeah, shimmy, yeah. Give me the mic so I can take. I'm sorry, this is Iron Maiden.
Yeah. We just lost
Somebody's
20%
already
of the listeners.
yeah, somebody's already typing. I didn't come here for this shit. Okay, I
I come here
apologize.
for metal. But yeah, these colors don't run is a good 1-2 punch. Brighter than 1,000 suns, though. Like, the lengthy track could have been shortened to make it a bit more punchy, and that can be said for pretty much the rest of this album here on in. Great vocals, great playing. The Pilgrim, that Eastern Phrygian part in the song is cool. I like that, especially the guitar solo.
Yeah.
I think that's probably like my favorite part of Modern Maiden is when the lead parts start, because I've always loved their guitar solo style. But
Yeah, I haven't mentioned this at all because I think that it goes without saying that the Bruce always sounds great. The guitars always sound great, like performance wise. Like it's
yeah,
almost like a given. Like there's no point to say that because everybody knows. Like they're
yeah,
very good at what they do. So yeah.
yeah, like at no point have I ever felt like they were phoning it in performance wise.
Yeah.
But Out of the Shadows is a more oh, sorry, The Longest Day. Love that proggy riffage before the chorus. Out of the Shadows is a more somber ballad style track. Reincarnation of Benjamin Brieg, first single from the album, cool song, love the riffs. For the Greater Good of God is more Modern Maiden. Lord of Light, cool stuff. Legacy is good closer. Legacy is good closer. My my hot take though is there's plenty of great stuff with Modern Maiden, but it could definitely benefit from some self-editing. I don't think they've put an album out since the 90s that was less than an hour long, and I
Yeah.
feel like they're shooting themselves in the foot with that. Like, didn't Steve Harris say something along the lines of he's bored of writing short songs, so he just goes like full prog with them every time, and
I,
it's like,
I would believe that if there was actually progginess to most of them, but most of the time it's just repeating parts over and over. Long doesn't mean prog.
yeah,
It just means long.
yeah, and it's this is one of those things where I had to like look at myself and say, am I the crazy one? Am I the crazy one for not putting Matter of Life and Death in the top 5? But like, honestly, this is one of those where Different World is a great song, but for the rest of it, I just don't really get the hype compared to the rest of a sizable chunk of their discography.
Yeah.
Yeah. So back over to you
Okay.
with your number 13.
No, 14.
14, sorry.
Yeah. My number 14 is Dance of Death from 2003.
Okay.
More in that area of the samey Maiden stuff. Now, a lot of people talk shit about the album cover, but the more that I've looked at it over the years, the more I'm like, I don't know. I kind of really like it. There's something about it that's really weird. And at this
It's
point,
entered the realms of so bad it's good. like
Yeah,
almost.
especially because they've been putting out such uninteresting album artwork now that I
Yeah.
look at that and I go, at least it's weird.
Yeah.
But other than that, it's just more of the same. And this album was the one where all of a sudden you're like, oh, now we're well into it's the 2000s, second album of theirs of the 2000s, and they're full on just like, look, we just write Maiden stuff now. We're
Yeah.
not trying to push things in any necessarily bold direction. It's literally from here on out. It's just like, if you like the same old, then then come along with us.
Hmm.
But yeah, I don't have much more to say about that. I could say the same thing I've said about other albums. There's some songs I really like. There's some songs that are kind of dull. There's some songs that could have been shorter. There's some songs that didn't need to be on there at all. I just it's fine. Number
Yeah.
14, Dance of Death.
Cool. So my number 13 is The Final Frontier. I had a little brain fart there for a second.
Okay.
So this is the first Iron Maiden album that I can remember coming out, because this album came out the same year I got into metal, which was 2010. And I remember the hype for this album, and I think I have it in like a limited edition tin case instead of just a jewel case.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna kick it off. Satellite 15 ... The Final Frontier is a
Yeah.
big old epic track to lead us into the album. Kind of two tracks in one, a big theatrical opening and then a short kind of hard rocking track. See, that's the sort of left turn that I'd like more.
Yeah, like all the electronic stuff in the beginning of that song. Like I hear it and I go, this is great, because I'm all like, it sounds a little bit different and it's fun. I mean,
Yeah.
like a purist will be like, what is all this? What are they making
Yeah.
rap music now?
El Dorado's a fun track. Mother of Mercy is another good modern Maiden song. Coming Home is a Maiden ballad. You know, it's good, but I don't know. I think the vocals are clipping a little bit. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I'm just, listening to it on shit hot headphones, and I'm just picking up all of like the crackly nuances of production. But The Alchemist, is refreshing to have some shorter Maiden songs on this album, on the heels of its predecessor, which was very drawn out.
Yeah.
The Isle of Avalon is a lengthy modern Maiden track. Starblind, cool riffs in this one. Talisman, cool. The Man Who Would Be King, also cool. And When the Wind Blows is a big old epic track to close out on. Standard modern Maiden doing modern Maiden better than anyone else could hope to attempt, but this album's got a little bit more zest to it. And there's I noticed that the albums that I have lower in the lower half tend to be the more vanilla, just Maiden doing metal sort of vibe, whereas as you go further up, I've found the ones that have a bit of a theme going tend to whet my appetite, so to speak. Yeah.
I mean, I really like that one. So that one isn't here yet for me. You already talked about this one. This will be another short one. My number 13 is Brave New World from 2000.
Brave New World.
I mean, at the time it was a big deal because it was, the return of Bruce Dickinson. But at that time in my life, I wasn't really interested in Iron Maiden anyway. I knew about it. It was shortly after that I think I started getting into them, but I started getting into classic Maiden and not newer stuff.
Yeah.
But listening to it now, it's got some great songs on it. But once again, I think people put a lot of weight into this album, either because this was when they discovered Maiden, or they remember the feeling of Bruce is back. Because if you take those two things away, it's not that great.
It's an Iron Maiden
It's an
album.
and
Yeah.
it's got good songs on it, but it also has some okay songs.
Yeah.
And once again, like I've been saying, some songs could have been shorter, some songs could have been cut all together. But it's a fine album. It's just nothing impressive and not one that I go back to and listen to. You could say that about every album from this millennium. I do not. Well, there's one. There's one album from this millennium that I'll get to that I go back and listen to because I think it's very good. But not yet. So let's move on to your number 12.
Cool. So my number 12 is the one with the infamous CG album cover, Dance of Death. So I recently found out as well that apparently that was just the image that they used on it was like a mock-up for a more detailed version that would be made, but they just decided, ah, you know what, we actually kind of like it, the Tomb Raider cutscene vibe, But yeah, it's got arguably one of the most horribly dated album covers of all time, even for its time, but I like it personally. Like, in that so bad it's good sort of way.
It's all that stuff's going to come back around the same way that a lot of us look at like old Nintendo games and like, oh, it's so cool how it looks. Then eventually this kind of stuff's going to come back around where everyone's going to be like, isn't it so awesome how the first Doom game looked?
Yeah.
You know.
Hell, I've always loved how that looked, but
Well, that was 90s, wasn't it, when that one came out? So
1993.
Yeah. Shit, that long ago? Holy fuck. I never played I had friends that played that. And so I didn't actually play them. I've never been a video game person since the original NES. That's it.
Fair enough. Fair enough. But yeah, so what do we got here? We got Wildest Dreams, good energy for an opener. Rainmaker, a concise track two for a good 1-2 punch. We have two songs in a row that don't crack the 4-minute mark, and that was thoroughly enjoyable. Doesn't need to be 7 minutes plus every time. However, you got No More Lies, cool atmosphere on this one. Montsegur, cool riffs, me likey. Dance of Death has like a fun Hobbit dance vibe to it, the whole time I was thinking, I for one do not think it was because the band was down.
Yeah.
I think it was because there was a 2-foot Stonehenge monument on stage in danger of being crushed by a dwarf. But like, yeah,
there are a couple moments in Iron Maiden songs where I really think Bruce is about to go, and oh, Ali danced, the little children of a Stonehenge.
No one knows who they were or what they were doing. I'd fucking piss myself if they did that. If they covered like, that'd be great. Gates of Tomorrow is a rocking track. New Frontier is another upbeat Maiden track. Passchendaele, I love a Maiden song about history, especially the World Wars. Face in the Sand. Now, as I'd mentioned earlier, that there's very few moments in Iron Maiden's catalog where the explicit use of an actual double pedal occurs, but it is actually all over this song. That's Nico using two pedals.
Okay.
I looked into it because I was like, nah, it's got too much of a consistent helicopter vibe to be 1 foot. But yeah, Age of Innocence, I love the chorus in this song. Very uplifting musically, even if the lyrics are a little more darker in subject matter. And Journeyman, softer song to close out on. To be honest, I really enjoyed this one. There's a lot of variety on this, and I think that's something that other latter-day Maiden albums lack sometimes. So this one definitely, it had a lot of different types of songs, and that's what really pushed this one up for me. Even if I think the reason that nobody talks about Dance of Death is the album cover. I think nobody ever talks fairly about the music within. They just see the PS1 graphics on it and think, ew. But yeah, I really like Dance of Death.
Yeah.
So with that, over to you.
Cool. My number 12 is the 2015 album The Book of Souls.
Nice.
And I I enjoy a lot about this album, and I did when it came out. There's a part of me now that I'm like, should that have been the last Maiden album? Because I feel like it would have been a nice way to go out. But if Maiden fans don't want them to stop making music. But I just think that it's very well put together, and they made a very smart decision by calling it a double album, even though it's not much longer than the other albums they had already been putting out. But
Yeah.
calling it a double album, they actually get away with it being long. Also, it helps that the last song is like a big ass fucking epic,
Yes.
and it's really good. It's a really good long Maiden song. So, but yeah, I think that it's not their strongest of the 20,000s, the 2000s, in my opinion. What do you call that when you're referring to 2000 all the way to now? It's not the 2000s. It's
I call it 21st Century Maiden.
the 20. There you go. The 21st Century Maiden. It's a good one. It has a good energy to a lot of it. There are some songs. I think it could have been one album. It doesn't have to be a double album, but nothing is like super bad. And some of it's templatey at times, but there's something about it that I do really enjoy, and I think it's probably just a vibe maybe going throughout the album, but yeah, it's good. It's it's still, to me, doesn't crack the top 10 for sure, but it's a pretty good album, and that's my number 12, The Book of Souls.
Cool. So I'm gonna talk about an album that you weren't really a big fan of, but I ended up quite liking. My number 11 is Senjutsu,
Okay.
and I can make a case for it. So this is the most recent Maiden record. And like I said, I like my modern Maiden to have a little bit of zest to it. Some you choose my words carefully here. Some ethnic flair.
Okay.
When it feels like something a little otherworldly.
Sure. Okay.
So for this and Book of Souls, there's a very clear, there's a bit more of a samurai vibe to this one, and the Book of Souls had a more Mayan sort of look, and I found that very interesting, but with that, Senjutsu, very heavy, leaning into the Eastern vibe, very much. Stratego, Nico McBrain bringing the galloping kickage. He's got that going on with the feet. And again, this is a case of I'm trying to figure out if that's double pedal or just insane right foot technique. And this is the one where I'm genuinely unsure.
I think he's just got an amazing right foot, honestly.
Yeah, he's just got a giant fucking bicep on his
his one leg is like a Popeye arm leg. It's like
just keeps like a can of spinach nearby at all times. But yeah, writing on the wall feels like a mixture of classic rock and stompy folk.
That one was writing on the wall was. I was actually a little bit excited for the album when that song came out because I thought it was really good, and that's, to me, that's like the best song on the album, I think.
Yeah, that really cool. Lost in a Lost World. Now I know you weren't a big fan of the synth choice on this album, but like,
not at all.
Nah. While I'm not a fan of the sound specifically, I'm more of just I like that it's there to add a little bit of atmosphere, even if the patch they chose was not the greatest
It was like
sound.
they all they did was
Yeah.
turn the keyboard on, and whatever sound it was on, that's the one they included on the album.
Yeah. But yeah, where was I? Days of Future Past. I like it. Shorter Modern Maiden track. Just rein it in a couple minutes, guys. The Time Machine. If there's one thing that can be said since the Bruce reunion, they have continued to lean further and further into some progressive parts. They still do the Maiden repeat some sections thing, but there are different sections across all this. Darkest Hour is kind of power ballady. There we go. Pallady. We got a new word. Death of the Celts. Here we close out with a trio of epics. Then we have the Parchment. I like the dark riffage in this. Hell on Earth is a big epic track to close out on. So yeah, you know how we were talking about self-editing?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, the last three songs to come to over half an hour. It's good stuff. I like when Modern Maiden has a little more zest to it, like I say.
Mm-hmm.
But still, you could shave 40 minutes off this album and achieve arguably a better result.
Yeah.
Because there are several moments on here that I thought, this is really cool. But as a result of having 7 other minutes attached to it, it feels like more of a, well, it is more of a commitment to hear, you're like, do I press skip? Do I press skip?
I mean, when I first listened to this album, I thought it was over like 5 or 6 times. I was like, "Oh, clearly this is the end of the album," and I was like, well, "There's 2 songs." It was.
They're both 15 minutes long.
Yeah, it was rough. It was very rough.
Yeah. Now, I'm not against long songs. I'm a Dream Theater fan. I'll throw that out there. So I am no stranger to the average song length being 10 minutes. But the difference is, in a Dream Theater song, you'll have like a soft part that verges on classical. You'll have like a full-blown Rush worship section, a thrash section, and then something completely different and uplifting. But when Maiden goes long, Maiden have a set amount of things, and they do them several times.
Yeah.
And I think that's what works to its detriment later down the line, I think.
Yeah, yeah. But I do feel like it, for the people who are like diehard, like Iron Maiden's their favorite band of all time, I do think a lot of those fans, they just like the time. Like, I want to be in an Iron Maiden album for longer. And I don't fault them for that. So that's why in some of those cases I go, I'm not the target audience for this because it's not interesting enough for me. But if it was Metallica, if they did a whole album of Inamorata's over and over again, I would be like, this is awesome. I love all the time I get to spend with them. So it's a personal preference for me, honestly. But
yeah.
But yeah, that album really was me kind of being like, I'm not really excited about Iron Maiden anymore. So,
and to be honest, like, for me, it's been more of a binge. With you, Iron Maiden's been there your whole life. So,
well, 20 years or so that I've been really listening to them. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's, for me, Latter Day Maiden is peaks and valleys.
Yeah.
So, over to you for
cool.
11.
Number 11.
That's it.
My favorite 21st century Iron Maiden album, number 11, The Final Frontier from 2010. I really like this from this point on. I really like all 11 of these albums. Cool. It's there's such a good energy to this album that is undeniable. Every time I play it, I'm like, God, it's just infectious. that it feels like they're very excited about this music. And I don't know. I remember reading something that when the album first came out, there was like talk that it was their last, that this was actually Final Frontier. This was the last Maiden
Yeah.
album. And maybe they thought they might make it the last two, and maybe there was this feeling of we got to go out big, on top with something energetic and that sounds meaningful. And to me, yeah, it's the best representation of Iron Maiden that's come out in this millennium. And a lot of great songs, a lot of really memorable songs, a lot of great guitar work on this album. I mean, production's not amazing, but it's nothing that takes me out of it. But overall, like I just think it's a very, very strong album, and yeah, it's literally the only one from the 21st century that I find myself returning to listen to, multiple times. So it ends up at my number 11, which means that no album from this century is in my top 10. Well, I guess for yours too, right? Because you have one. Nope. We're getting to your number 10, and you have I know what you haven't talked about. So you do have one in your top 10.
I do.
Let's do it.
And my number 10 Iron Maiden album is The Book of Souls.
Nice.
And I'm gonna tell you the little trend that I picked up on.
Okay.
Right, you notice how around Virtual 11 they got rid of the pointy bits on the letters.
Oh, they did?
Like if you have a look at any Maiden album released between 98, let me have a look here. I'm just gonna proofread it.
Like even now they've gone back to the non-pointy.
No. They've in recent times.
Oh,
Tell you what. Yeah, they got rid of the pointy for Virtual 11, and the points on the N, M, and other N didn't come back until the Book of Souls.
interesting.
And something, made me realize something. All of the ones, barring the X Factor, that don't have pointy letters ended up being the bottom portion of my list.
That's what it was. Some sort of subliminal thing that got into your brain. You're like, what is it about it? Oh, there's no points. God damn it.
Yeah. I remember someone once bringing up something similar to where it's like you can tell how good a Megadeth album is by what color the logo is. And it's like their thrash era is gold, their 90s era is silver, and then like Risk was, I can't even remember, but I don't agree because my favorite era
is there even
I
don't think there's a Megadeth logo on the cover of Risk. I think it just says Risk.
Yeah?
I might be wrong.
I can't remember.
Anyway, that's for another episode that we already did.
Yeah. Yes. Go listen to that if you like Megadeth. But
go listen to Risk if you like good albums, but the original version, not the fucked up version. Fuck that.
Not the neutered version. The remixed and remastered after 5 years of existence for no good reason.
Yeah.
So yeah, number 10, Book of Souls.
Mm-hmm.
So this one came out when I was in college. And honestly, it's an album that kind of eluded me. I was in a different place when this came out. I was more into grunge, and I was more into glam. I wasn't really into the middle of the road, just heavy metal thing at the time.
Yeah.
You either wore flannel or hairspray, or I didn't really care. Like it was one of two extremes. So this one came out when I was in college, like I said, but I'm going to jump right in. If Eternity Should Fail, damn good opener. Lots of cool parts. Speed of Light, I heard this so many times.
It's a good tune.
Badass hard rocking song. The Great Unknown is a sprawling, prowling track. The Red and the Black is our first epic of the album. And like I said, I'm a sucker for whoa-ohs. Like, holy shit. Just audience participation parts. Chef's kiss. When the river runs.
They had to start throwing those in because they realized that the crowd would just start woeing to guitar riffs.
Yeah, yeah.
And they're like, "Oh, we should put some Axl Rose. We should put some actual. Why can't I talk?
Someone get some WD-40. We need to grease them up.
Some actual woes. That's a really tough sentence to say. We should put some actual woes in our songs. Holy crap! I'm glad we're almost done.
That sounds good. We're almost there. We can do it. But yeah, right. Where was I? When the river runs deep, just up tempo gear shifting riffage. The Book of Souls title track. I'm a sucker for that Desert Voyage style, Zeppelin Kashmir-esque sort of vibe. Death of Glory. It's up tempo Maiden track. See, this is the thing. There's like different, varying tempos, cool stuff, cool atmosphere.
That might be, and that might be a part of the reason why the album's enjoyable, because it does change it up. The sequencing's pretty good.
There's a push and pull to it, that keeps you invested. Shadows of the Valley definitely feel like this is a musical callback to Wasted Years. Like, upon hearing that, I was like, yeah. That's not subtle. Tears of a Clown, the ride cymbal work is The Man of Sorrows is a ballady track, and Empire of the Clouds, Maiden's longest song ever, and is actually really, really good. It's justified in its grandeur. And, despite me talking about length being a problem in 21st century Maiden.
Oh, length is not a problem for me, sir. Just kidding.
It's okay. You know what? That was well done. Well placed dick joke. I appreciate that. I tip my hat to you. But yeah, I think they made the right move calling this a double album, because it makes you feel like you can take one half or the other. You don't need to listen to both at the same time. But yeah, of the latter day Maiden, this is my favorite.
All right.
And yeah, over to you.
Cool. All right, we're wrapping this up the right way for me, because this is the beginning of the top 10, the end of the episode, the beginning of the top 10. But I am very, very happy to have Mr. Blaze Bayley in the top 10. My number 10, The X Factor from 1995. This one's grown on me a lot. I don't remember hearing it at the time, although I'm sure I did, because I remember I'm sure I did, but it didn't make any kind of impact on me at the time, and I didn't care that it was a different vocalist. It was no big deal. But getting into it, this is one that I've always liked things about it. There are some songs, Man on the Edge is an amazing song. 2 a.m. There's these great, really great, well-written songs on this, and the ones where it's written a little more in a key that Blaze can really shine. It's really good. If they could have written more to him, it would have been an amazing album. But it's still really good. But as the time has gone on, and especially doing the Iron Maiden ranking, I purposely, for everything post Fear of the Dark, I decided to go backwards. And when I got to the X Factor, I was like, this is really good. No fucking denying it. This is a really good album. And it was because I'd gotten so worn out on all this other samey Maiden stuff. And then when I got to Virtual 9, I'm like, I like Blaze, but this could be better. And then you get to X Factor, I'm like, oh, it was better. The first album is you have a good point about the production, but overall, just the vibe and the songs and his voice, I just really enjoy this album a lot. And yeah, so it had to make it into the top 10 for me, because it is an album that I think deserves a little more time from maybe not even Maiden fans, just people that just like some good sort of 90s metal.
Yeah.
It's
Something
just
a
a
little
good.
bit more moody.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's a really really good album to me. But obviously the original run with Bruce Dickinson is to me the best.
Yeah.
And
Almost want to keep going. Like,
I know, but we
yeah.
gotta half this up because next time we'll have a lot more to talk about because I know for sure. Oh, so X Factor was my number 10. So I know for sure that there will be a couple placements that I have that are going to be there's one album in particular, and everybody knows probably what it is, that I have higher than most people do, and people fucking hate it. They fucking
Is
hate it that I have that album
is
so high.
is that the one behind you in the bottom right-hand corner?
No, it is not on my shelf right now. But next
Ah.
time when we do, I'm going to have, if you're listening to this in the podcast, I chose 4 Maiden albums to display behind me. Next episode, I will choose 4 different Maiden albums. And there's no alluding to where they're going to go it's just the 4 that I chose. But yeah, the album I'm referring to will be up behind me next time. But yeah, so it's going to be an interesting conversation because I'm not your average Maiden fan. I am in some ways because I will, hold up Number of the Beast on that mountain and be like, "This album fucking rules."
Yeah.
But at the same time, I have my thoughts on other Maiden stuff that doesn't seem to gel with a lot of the old school Maiden folk. But
Yeah.
so it'll be a really interesting discussion either way. And I don't know. Do you have any parting words?
I was just gonna say, like, now that we've got to the midway point, I've gone from looking at a stack of albums and thinking, oh man, I gotta get through all this, to I actively want to binge listen
Yeah,
each of these back to back.
yeah,
See, that's how it's kind of split in two for me. I read through some lists and that stuff, and not to give anything away, but I saw the likes of Fear of the Dark in the bottom 3 spots, and I was thinking, man, you're fucking crazy. You're
yeah.
fucking crazy.
That's what that
Get out of here.
that's ridiculous. But
Yeah.
whatever. I mean, that was honestly. I remember when we'll talk about the album next time because do we have the same top 9 though? We do have the same top 9. It's
I
just
believe we do. We still have the 2 Paul Di'Anno albums and the rest of the Bruce albums.
yep. So
Which
we're gonna have the same exact 9 albums, but we'll just have to find out if we match up on any of them or not, and that'll be fun. But that's for next time, ladies and gentlemen. That's all for this part 1. Man, we were efficient in this
Yeah.
episode. I think next time we're gonna have more to say.
I was gonna say next week is gonna be the real test. I think like you could be talking at a 2-hour episode.
Yeah, possibly. And so yeah. So yeah. My brain is broken. That means we need to leave. So I appreciate everyone in the podcast world for listening, everyone in YouTube for watching. If you're playing along, put your bottom 8 in the comments, your bottom 8 Maiden albums. And there's a few of you that do that, and even though I don't comment on them, I read through all of them, and I love seeing the different takes on the albums. So yeah, peanut butter platypus to all of you, and yeah, we'll be back next week to do the second half, the upper half of the Iron Maiden discography. And as usual, let's get the fuck out of here. I'm gonna throw it over to Eddie the Ed Sparxx to take us out.
Later. Da-na-na-na.